But here, Sid, before I get into what I read, have you been reading anything lately?
Mainly, I've been rereading Nisekoi and Bleach so as to have completely read them beginning to end just in time for their ending, so I can write some retrospective pieces on them. So with Nisekoi, I'm up to the Marika's wedding arc.
That was actually a pretty decent arc.
That's probably my favorite part of Nisekoi.
Had some good fights.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Sugumi versus Honda was excellent.
And plus, personally, Marika's actually probably one of my favorite characters.
That's because you don't know that Chitoge is the all-powerful goddess.
I kind of might agree with Colton, but interesting enough.
Wait.
Chitoge's great too, but
then
I
where's
think
the Onodera fan? We need the Trinity.
I like Onodera.
You can't like both.
I guess I can.
No, you can't. This is Nisekoi rules.
You can like more than one, but which one is your waifu?
Okay, if we're going that route, I really would have to pick Onodera, honestly.
Okay.
And Sid, you would stick with?
I'd stick with Marika, because I just found her... I find the way that Komi developed her throughout the story very interesting, because there were a lot of just subtle kind of moments that hinted at her past when I was reading the series that I didn't pay attention to first time reading it, but feels very rewarding when I go back and revisit those moments and just see how Marika as a character had been betrayed and how her story had been developed through the course of the series up until that big climax with the Marika's wedding arc. So I just find her development very interesting and her portrayal as a character very interesting.
I will give you the fact that if you chose her for waifu, that at least she would die and then you could choose, she'd die from I don't know, anime illness.
Yeah.
And then you could choose a better waifu after learning your mistakes.
Preferably Chitoge. I mean, come on,
No, not
guys.
preferably. Only option is Chitoge. Chitoge is the best girl.
You're just saying that because she's blonde.
No, not because she's blonde at all. In fact, I prefer green hair, i.e. C2 from Code Geass, or even that girl from Lasner and I forget her name from Megazone 2-3. But anyway, green hair, that does it for me. But nah, man, I'm telling you, freaking Chitoge's the best.
So does that also mean that that season 0 Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh is also your waifu?
Oh shit. I haven't really thought that out. It's you're kind of springing this on me all of a sudden.
And hey, he's rich.
It is easier to fall in love with a rich person than a poor person. It is easier.
It is.
I didn't say it was right, but it is easier.
But Sid, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Well, I've also been rereading Bleach. I haven't really gotten too far. I'm on volume 2, but wow, I've hated Bleach. I haven't enjoyed Bleach in so long. I forgot that there was a point I did actually enjoy Bleach.
Oh boy.
And rereading the earlier volumes, I'm kind of astonished at how completely different a series it is at the beginning, because it actually feels fun to read.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually humor. The characters actually have more than one emotion just in being angsty, in talking weird, indirect, nonsensical ways, and having these shocked, dramatic faces or whatever. It's a lot more playful. It has a lot more fun with its concept. The characters have more personality, have better interactions with each other. I'm not saying it's great. It's amazing. It's pretty, typical standard kind of shonen fare. I mean, that's kind of dismissive, but I mean, it isn't necessarily, it was never really groundbreaking in any respect.
But it was fine.
It's pleasant. It's enjoyable to read. I enjoy reading it. I actually enjoy. I like reading Ichigo, who I don't care about at all. I don't think I've cared about at all in the last maybe 10 years. I actually find myself enjoying Ichigo rereading earlier Bleach. I enjoy Rukia. I enjoy freaking Chad, who is the most useless character in the series.
Chad is my guy, alright?
But he does nothing in the higher series. He keeps getting forgotten.
So what? We love Yamcha and he does nothing.
Yeah, but Yamcha used both hands. Chad is like, he gets lost in his manga and he's like, ¿En dónde estoy? Estoy buscando por mi Mexican manga, pero no puedo encontrarlo. And it's just
but Yamcha, also Yamcha's so memorable because he's such a consistent failure. Like, he doesn't ever... No, think about it. When does Yamcha actually ever win a fight that matters on his own?
Well, I was gonna say against the...
How many craters did Chad fall into?
Well... I was actually gonna say he did win his fight against the invisible guy during that one.
No, he wouldn't have won that without Krillin, like, bringing Master Roshi and Bulma.
I know, I was gonna say that if you let me finish, Sid.
Didn't he win a fight in Dragon Ball Evolution?
We don't talk about Dragon Ball Evolution, Josh.
That's not canon.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Josh?
Yeah.
What is this Dragon Ball Evolution? Live action Dragon Ball? Pfft, no one would make that. That would never work.
Nope,
Come on. No one would be stupid enough to make that.
Especially not the Chinese.
Especially not the Chinese. Like, Dragon Ball being popular in China, that's it.
No.
It's not like it's Chinese influence.
No, never.
So, but back to Bleach, like, I'm curious, like, at what point do you guys think, okay, I'm going to use this terminology, it got bad? Like, when do you think Bleach gets bad?
Around the time they went to Hueco Mundo.
Just remembering from my experience, getting into Bleach for the first time, reading the story, I actually got into Bleach pretty late, all things considered. I got into it in, like, 2010. Now, back in 2010, I wasn't, like, involved in the anime community. Like, I didn't go online and look at, like, what people were talking about. I just found things occasionally that looked interesting to me, and I would get into it and watch it, read it, whatever. So I didn't know that at that point Bleach, everyone was already saying, oh, Bleach sucks now. Bleach has been bad for a long time. So I didn't know all that going into it when I first started it. So I just started it out, and so for a long time, Bleach is a pretty fast read, fast watch. Well, I mean, in the anime, it's a fast watch until the filler, and that's when we stop. Don't bother with the bound art and just skip to the other canon parts or just skip to the manga. But, so Bleach is a fast read when you're reading in graphic novels. Yep. Because chapters flow by fast, volumes flow by fast, so you get through it quickly. So when you're reading it just in a binge, like, some of the problems with Bleach's pacing aren't necessarily that noticeable when you first start out of it, but then, like, once you get into Heisei Mundo and you start seeing, like, just the story, things of the story just not add up. Like, you see a bunch of fights that really serve no purpose other than just to be flashy, cool fights to have with characters who may or may not actually directly impact the story. And then you have, like, ideas that are brought up and never addressed again. And so you keep going with that. And then I at some point, I feel the point where I got fed up with Bleach, for sure, like, I had problems with it as I was keep reading it, but the point where I got fed up with it was when I finally caught up and had to keep up with it weekly during Deicide and seeing all that awful, like, pointless and, like, disappointing, like, conclusion to the freaking years-long story of, like, fighting against Aizen and these Arankars just be concluded in the most unsatisfying, disappointing way on a week-by-week, slow, painfully slow, like, burnout. So for me, the point where I turned off Bleach was the point when, was like Deicide, because that's when I started keeping up with it, and I could notice just how painful this pacing was when you had to read it week by week. But if I were to speak from it, like, just from this perspective and nail down the moment Bleach really started to fall apart, I do agree it would be Hueso Mundo, but more specifically, I would put it at the point after Ichigo and Grimmjow's fight, because after that, we get some of the most pointless padding in the terms of those fights between, like, the wise captains and, like, those random Fracciones, like, who try to destroy the pillars or whatever, and that all serves no purpose whatsoever. It doesn't add up to anything, and that goes on for about a year's worth of content without Ichigo, our main character, at all. And that's the point where I think Bleach just completely falls apart, because that's the point where it actually loses sight of its main character, like, for a long time, for about a year. It completely loses sight of its main character. It completely squashes the momentum of its story by going into some completely pointless battles that just have no point, just only serve to stretch out the story.
Okay.
And so I would think that would be the point where I think Bleach falls apart as a story.
Colton, you want to, because I have a point to prove with both of those, or a theory I have. I mean, I have a theory on everything, right? Take anime too seriously. But you were going to say something. Was it agreeing or disagreeing?
I just want this recorded, and I want this on record. That I actually, around the time I stopped reading Bleach was around the end of the Fullbring arc. That arc is probably single-handedly the worst story arc, the most forced story arc in any manga I've ever read.
It is so pointless.
It sucks balls. I hate it.
There is absolutely no point in having Ichigo lose his powers because
he gets them back.
He gets them back. Like, none of the dynamics between the characters haven't changed.
Nope.
Like, none of the new characters or the power or the Fullbring powers have any effect on the following story arc. I mean, I guess technically, like,
no,
Tsukishima,
it's filler. It's all filler in manga form.
Yeah.
I guess technically you can say, oh, but Tsukishima, like, ends up, like, giving Ichigo back his sword after Wak breaks it. But yeah, like that mattered because in literally the very next chapter, Wak broke the sword again. So what good did that do? Like, that one character who was introduced that arc that actually did something of use in the next arc ended up, being completely useless after all. So it's complete filler. It's a year complete filler.
That's the pattern of Bleach. Ichigo fights a guy, he loses against the guy, he trains for like however long, gets a new power, fights the guy again, wins with that new power, but then has to fight another guy only for that power to not work, and then have to train to get another power, and then so on and so forth.
So it's like Metroid.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say about the Fullbring arc is that at least it was consistently focused on Ichigo. The 1,000-year blood war is so painful because it doesn't have any focused character. Like, supposedly Ichigo is still our main character, but he appears so very little in the arc when you think about it. Most of the arc is spent on like battles between the captains and the Quincy's, and not all of those fights end up really having are really necessary or have even a decent payoff. And like, it's all just so dragged out, and it's just so, there's just nothing really like driving the arc. Like, when you think about it, like the obvious like emotional hook, the obvious like relationship that should have carried that arc would be Ichigo and Uryu, because it's the arc is the Soul Reapers versus the Quincy's. Ichigo and Uryu are like, they became close friends, rivals, whatever, and one is a Soul Reaper, one is a Quincy. Like, they could have had an interesting dynamic there, but what did they do? Ichigo is barely in the arc, and Uryu supposedly turns coat and becomes an antagonist, except it turns out, no, he's not. He was still on the good guy side all along.
Oh man, what good writing.
Uryu does also... Yeah, but the difference is Uryu does nothing in the arc as a supposedly an antagonist, other than one exchange with Ichigo. He's barely in the arc just as much as Ichigo is barely in the arc.
Okay,
so it's like completely pointless.
Hold on, I'm sorry, Sid, but here, Josh, you said you had a theory.
I do. I have a theory to all this, and I'm not trying to discount anything. I think a lot of what you guys are saying is completely true. I still enjoy Bleach, but I cannot point to it and say, "Oh, this is fine art here," right?
Yeah, this is the Tezuka of our time, right, Josh?
Yes,
oh my God,
yes,
no.
Clearly it is. No, I would have to say, and this was brought to my attention when I read a certain article by a certain person who will remain anonymous because of the sake of not throwing shit.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is, I read an article, and it came to my attention that around the same time, because you both pinpoint, everyone pinpoints kind of the same centralized location. It's like the Vizard, Hueco Mundo dichotomy there, that kind of lull where it's like, okay, this is still good, this is still interesting, it starts getting a little bit lost. If you look at that time, supposedly, and if I remember correctly, I don't have like a single source I can cite, which is the problem. But Bleach underwent a editor change.
Interesting.
And if I remember correctly, I think the editor for Bleach went and moved to Gintama. And it was right around that 2009 era. Now, I could be completely wrong. Someone will have to fact check me and go back and look at that. But my theory is somehow that the editor was either holding Bleach together before, because if you remember, and I asked you guys, who, your main Gintama fans, Colton and co, hey, how was Gintama around 2009 going forward around that same time era? Remember when I asked you that, and you guys were like, "Oh yeah, well it started getting serious and blah 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 blah," or something, right? It started.
Oh, you're talking about. Did we had this conversation off mic, didn't we?
We did. Yes, we did, because I was upset with that article.
Okay.
And I was like, no one did any research. They all blamed it on Kubo, and Kubo could still be to blame. But my point is, editors play a huge role. I mean, editors shaped Dragon Ball, shaped Akira.
That's true. Like the Android arc is such a mess because like Toriyama's like got editors, like he had input from like his Furious editor and his like current editor, and those like kind of shaped like how he wrote the story. Like one editor didn't like the direction he was going, the other editor didn't like the direction he was going, so he kept having to change the antagonist, and so that's why the arc just changed, like has such weird pacing as it goes along. And then his third editor, like in the Boo arc, like he just let Toriyama do whatever the heck he wanted, which is why the Boo arc kind of drags a little bit, but it's also why it's full of these like weird ideas, and it also kind of just changes focus like every now and again, and it mixes like comedy, but then it goes back to kind of being like later or like Cell's like era serious, but then back into light comedy. Like it's full of Toriyama ideas, but it's not focused.
Weird tonal shifts.
Yeah, so the lax, like, leadership of Toriyama's editor during the Brew arc led to it being unfocused, and the conflicting, like, input he got from, like, his previous editor and his current editor during the Cell arc resulted in him switching focus, like, pretty frequently throughout the course of that arc.
Yeah.
So definitely those stories would have not been the same if, like, he had like an editor who really kept him focused on the direction of the story, and like let him do what he wanted to do to some extent, but didn't let him go completely off the walls with his ideas or like get lost in his ideas like he kind of did in the Boo arc.
Well, I guess getting back to Bleach, that's kind of my point, is we saw, and Toriyama is a brilliant, well-documented case thanks to, other sources and, Kanzenshuu included. We can see exactly what went on there, and I feel like we don't have a lot of transparency, we don't have a lot of exposure when it comes to something like Bleach, because quite literally it's a underappreciated series. And I'm not saying that like, oh, Bleach is his masterpiece. No, it's a good series that suffered from either bad editors, a bad editor either in the fact of, okay, a new editor came in and was horrible, or the new editor came in and did not rein Kubo in. Because Kubo can do good stuff, but the question is, look at Zombie Powder, which you can herald as kind of being one of his better works, and we all like the first half. I have not met anyone who says, oh yeah, the first half of Bleach sucks. Like, it's always the opposite. They always say,
I know one person, but that person also hates most shonen stuff in general. So.
Well, and in that case, it's just a matter of personal bias and taste, and that's perfectly fine. But I guess my point is, Bleach suffers from editors. Or Kubo. Either way, the point is the editor change was when Bleach changed. And the thing is, I feel like, and I have no proof, I have no proof, because I can't track which editor was on which series at which time, which is a damn shame. I need someone who's listening to this to try and get in touch with me, because this is a story I would love to write. But long story short, we need to find out who was placed where and what, because we know who the editor was for Bleach beforehand. They changed, he changed hands over to Sorachi on Gintama, and just quite literally, Gintama was never the same. People said it improved, and then Bleach never got better. And I don't think Shonen Jump reinvested in Bleach to try and bring it back up to where it was. They said, we might have shot ourselves in the foot on that one. So it's been in that state, and it's just not gotten better. It's gotten quite literally worse, and now we're in a zombie powder situation where quite literally it's going to be resolved how Kubo wants to do it, and then he'll be forced to get back to work on some other project, and maybe we'll see that come 2017. I don't know, but yeah, that's my theory. Is it's an editor issue, and no one has the proof for someone to write that story. But I mean, the best I could do, I mean, even if I were to write that story, is a couple paragraphs. I've literally explained it now. It's taken more time to just get to the point than the point itself. That's how weak of a point it is. So I want to throw it out there because I want people to be aware of it. But at the same time, I have no substantial backing evidence, which is the biggest flaw. So
I think it's a good theory. I think that it'd be worth trying to do some research into that and trying to make a timeline to see maybe where you can pinpoint where the point where Bleach really started to lose focus, and match it up with people's general opinions of where Bleach started to lose them as a fan.
Because the interesting thing is, I have all the statistics as far back as year 2000 in terms of reader polls. You can get those online pretty easily. I can start seeing where Bleach dipped. I need to correlate the dipping of the score from Shonen Jump with, one, the events in the manga where most readers say, okay, this is starting to get bad. So I can get the Japanese perspective, the American, the English reading perspective, and then even get and try and correlate that with the exchange of editors. And I wouldn't be surprised if it started declining right before the change of editors, because maybe the editor stops caring or starts saying I got to start focusing on this new project. I got to catch up on 5 million chapters of Gintama before I swap over. Whatever the case may be. So I really strongly believe that is the case. It's an editor problem, and that's it.
I mean, that is very plausible, honestly.
Yeah, because even when rereading the earlier volumes, you can notice that there's some elements of Kubo's writing style that definitely were weaknesses, but they didn't become exacerbated until later on in the series. There are some kind of issues in the way he kind of sets up the story and kind of establishes the villains, the Hollows, and how he tries to kind of do stuff with them that sort of kind of confuses the idea of what they kind of are, and he kind of starts to want to, it's clear that he sort of defined this premise too kind of neatly and too straightforwardly, so he's trying to find ways to kind of ease out and do different things kind of redefine it. And so he's in some respects he starts contradicting himself even earlier on, and that really becomes a problem later when it seems like he's just retconning things just for the sake of writing a story the way he wants to.
Yeah, remember when the Menos Grande were powerful?
Yeah, but it didn't feel as problematic, at least in the earlier part of Bleach, just because the focus on the story and the focus on the characters just felt more consistent. But as the story went on, it lost sight of who the main characters were, who the secondary cast was, what the focus of the story is, what they're fighting for. It lost sight of that, and it just became a little bit more of a mess. And I definitely think it would be an interesting project to go and research how that change of editors could have affected things, how that correlated to kind of its falling rankings in the Jump polls, falling sales numbers, opinions of it changing around. And I think that a problem with it is that maybe there isn't quite enough information out there, or maybe you need access to information that require you to know Japanese. You need to read some news items in Japanese kind of to really get the full picture of how things played out. But it's a really interesting theory, and I think there's a lot of evidence, in the way the manga plays out to, support it.
Whew. Yeah, Bleach, that's a thing. I think you guys said it best. I really didn't have anything to say about Bleach other than, hey, like, I haven't read Bleach in like 5 years, and, you know, like, dropping Bleach was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life, because I really cannot stress enough just how much...
Except for dropping Black Clover. Come on.
I haven't... Well, I've read, like... Josh, I've read, like, a chapter of that. I'm still willing to give that a chance. Difference with Bleach is that I was gonna say, damn it, you made me lose my train of thought.
Black Clover does that.
Yes.